We've all seen it happen over the years. Some handguns don't retire with a splash. They just quietly disappear into the background. No big announcements, no send-off, just a slow fade until they turn up as surplus sales or buried in old collector guides. Just look at examples like the Colt All-American 2000, the Remington R51, or even the Taurus Curve. Most of them vanish without a trace. But every so often, one of those long-forgotten designs doesn't just make a nostalgic cameo. It stages a full-blown comeback that no one saw coming. And what really turns heads, even die-hard, Glock owners are trading in their carry guns just to get their hands on this thing. Today's video takes you inside that exact kind of resurrection. A forgotten pistol brought back to life, thanks to a pile of factory original frames, and one determined engineer who refused to let it die. We'll break down how this once revolutionary squeeze, Cocker sidearm, rose from the ashes, how it navigated a minefield of patent concerns, and how it might just challenge some of today's most popular concealed carry guns. This is a rebirth story you've got to hear because nobody expected it. To understand how it all started, you've got to go back to the late 1970s. At the time, German law enforcement agencies were hunting for a sidearm that could be carried hot round in the chamber, but without sacrificing safety. That's when Heckler Koch stepped in with a radical concept. Their new design used a gas-delayed blowback system paired with a front strap squeeze mechanism that was unlike anything else on the market. The idea was simple in theory. When you wrapped your hand around the grip and applied forward pressure to the front strap, the internal striker system would cock, and it would only stay cocked as long as you held that pressure. Let go, and it would instantly decock even if your finger was on the trigger. That, combined with a fixed cold hammer, forged barrel mounted incredibly low in the frame, gave you a gun that ran flatter than most competition pistols and outgrouped many revolvers. It offered a level of mechanical safety that was almost unheard of among semi-automatics back then. But while the concept was genius, building the thing was a nightmare. The internal components were crafted with tolerances more at home in the aerospace world than in firearms manufacturing. The gas piston needed its own precision jig just to get pinned right. The slide was a multi-piece welded assembly. And the squeeze cock system inside the grip, it looked more like it belonged inside a Swiss watch than a duty pistol. Even the polygonal rifled barrels were hammer, forged from specialty French steel, using custom tooling. Heckler Koch ran full-page ads, trying to explain why the gun cost almost twice as much as a Browning high power. And to be fair, they weren't exaggerating. These pistols were practically hand-built. That firearm? The legendary Heckler Koch P7. Its tank-like build quality earned it decades of service life among uniformed officers. But that same complexity became its undoing. Manufacturing it was simply too costly. The machinery was getting old, and the rise of striker-fired polymer-framed pistols sealed its fate. Eventually, Heckler Koch pulled the plug. And that's when the madness started. What used to be bulk German police trade suddenly became red-hot collector items. Civilian market models, like the M8 and M13, started pushing well beyond the $3,000 mark. Rare versions like the K3, chambered in .22 long rifle, .32 automatic, and .380 automatic ended up behind glass at gun shows, or locked inside private vaults. The P7's legend only grew as it became harder and harder to find. That's right, about the time a Texas-based engineer named Brett found himself getting deeper into the P7 world. He'd carried one for more than a decade and loved its precision, its feel, but he dreaded the day a small part would break and turn his gun into a very expensive paperweight. Replacement recoil springs were nearly impossible to find. Piston cups had disappeared from shelves, and almost no gunsmiths still knew how to service the platform. So Brett started small. He reverse-engineered the tiny internal springs that were most prone to failure. Word got out on the HKP Pro forums, and demand blew up. From there, he graduated to more complex parts, fabricating detents, plungers, and other internal components. But it wasn't enough. Shooters didn't just want spare parts, they wanted full-functioning pistols again. The real turning point came when Brett stumbled across a stash of 92 brand-new, never-used P7M8 frames left over from the last production runs. These were still sealed in preservative, untouched by time. No slides, no barrels, just the raw, serialized frames. That discovery changed everything. Brett secured a Type 7 federal firearms license, booked time on precision-grade CNC equipment, and spent over 12 months re-engineering the most intricate components entirely from scratch. He sourced the exact same chrome molybdenum steel, originally imported from France by Heckler Koch, commissioned brand-new polygonal rifling mandrels, and partnered with Rim Country Manufacturing to cold hammer forge a fresh batch of barrels from raw blanks. Each barrel blank was subjected to a meticulous production cycle, stress-relieved to minimize internal tension, precision-machined to final dimensions, heat-treated for durability, cryogenically quenched to stabilize molecular structure, and finally treated with a plasma nitriding process to boost hardness and corrosion resistance for long-term use. But the real headache? The slide assemblies. Heckler Koch had originally crafted theirs by welding together 3 different precision-machined pieces, then finished grinding them to within 0.02 of an inch. To replicate that, Brett designed his own custom welding jigs and fixtures, then fused 17-4 precipitation, hardened stainless breech blocks into machined slide shells. After that, he milled in aggressive rear serrations, deep enough for gloved operation, yet not so deep that they compromised structural integrity. Once the slides and barrels were dialed in, Brett turned his attention to surface finish. Instead of sticking with traditional methods like bluing or parkerizing, he opted for black nitride, a ferritic salt bath process that hardens the outer steel layer to roughly 60 on the Rockwell hardness scale, while adding a matte graphite-colored surface. It resists sweat, holster friction, and basic solvent exposure. While a few critics raised concerns about maintenance, Brett had already tested multiple sample guns through thousands of rounds, using nothing but ballistal and classic hops number 9. No malfunctions, no abnormal wear. Now, onto what's probably the biggest gripe people always had about the P7, the heat. That gas system could make the trigger guard area feel like a branding iron after a few magazines. Brett's answer? He created a limited run of frames milled from solid billets of grade 5 titanium. These were cut on a 5-axis machine, then diffusion hardened and DLC coated. Titanium conducts heat much more slowly than carbon steel or aluminum, which buys shooters a little more comfort time before the gas system warms things up around the firing hand. At this point, people were asking the obvious question: how is any of this legal without Heckler Koch's blessing? The answer lies in the details of patent law. The original patents for the squeeze cocker and gas retarded blowback systems were filed in the year 1976 and expired after 2 decades, placing the actual mechanics of the P7 firmly in the public domain by the mid-1990s. While Brett couldn't use the Heckler Koch brand or the P7 name without risking trademark issues, the firearms internals were fair game. So, he founded a company called 7 Pro. He avoided any use of HK logos and clearly marked each pistol as a modern reproduction built on original German-manufactured frames. Slide serial numbers read 7 Pro M8, not HKP 7M8, eliminating any confusion. And before launching, he double-checked everything with an intellectual property attorney to ensure it was completely above board. That first shipment of pistols rolled out in June of the year 2024. Customers who had pre-ordered by email began receiving tracking information, and within days, were holding a brand new pistol that looked and felt like it had just left the Oberndorf factory, but better in every measurable way. Each unit was function tested before it shipped. Owners received detailed care instructions for the nitride finish, and those who ordered suppressor-ready barrels could choose between 1/2 by 28 or or 13.5 by 1 left-hand threading. Thanks to improved chamber tolerances and beefed-up recoil springs, these guns cycle 147 grain subsonic loads with suppressors just fine. Since the barrel is fixed, there's no need for a Nielsen booster, just thread your can on directly. In testing, the 6-baffle dead Aerodessa 9 proved to be the ideal suppressor match, keeping gas blowback minimal while preserving the slim, low-profile design that made the P7 famous. To keep things efficient and focused, Brett kept the initial batch pretty straightforward. Customers had 2 options: either go with a clean black nitride slide, machined for the original Heckler and Koch sight dovetails, or spend a bit more for a slide, pre-cut for legacy. HK sights with a ledge-style rear notch, designed for one-handed manipulations. Even with those limited choices, these new builds offered far more value than picking up an aging surplus P7 and trying to bring it back to life. One early buyer mentioned he had nearly shelled out top dollar for a lightly used P7, only to realize he'd have to thread the barrel, refinish the metal, and cross his fingers that the gas sleeve wasn't rusted out. Instead, he got a box, fresh squeeze cocker that ran cooler, cycled smoother, and came suppressor ready right out of the gate. Once those original batch of 92 German frames were spoken for, Brett and the 7PRO crew turned their attention to the next evolution, manufacturing fresh, American-made frames. These would be offered in 3 distinct materials: 70-75, T6 aluminum, for those who wanted something lighter and more affordable; 41-40 chromoly steel, for purists who prefer full-weight carry pistols; and a small batch of titanium for collectors looking to own something truly special. The aluminum version even includes an integrated accessory rail, finally delivering on years of user requests for a squeeze cocker that could host a weapon light or laser module. The 41-40 steel frame stays very faithful to the German original, but incorporates subtle reinforcement points based on data gathered from high round count torture testing. Unless you had a micrometer in hand, you'd never notice. All 3 frame variants share a newly engineered gas block with improved heat dissipation. The increased surface area helps draw heat away from the trigger zone faster, keeping things more comfortable during extended range sessions or training courses. The slide designs also evolved. The old school HK dovetail cuts are gone, replaced by Novak-compatible cuts that open the door to a wide variety of aftermarket iron sights and red dot adapters. Brett even brought a prototype optics-ready model to a regional range day. It featured a direct shield RMSC footprint with co-witnessed iron sights neatly tucked into the rear notch. The reaction was immediate. Shooters familiar with the P7's famously low bore axis said it felt like cheating. With a red dot, even faster. Some expressed concerns about structural integrity under recoil, but stress analysis simulations and over 5,000 rounds of live fire proved the setup was rock solid. No warping, no cracks, and no optic mounting issues. Naturally, once people saw the new builds, they started asking the next question: what calibers are coming? Back in the day, Heckler and Koch tried stretching the P7 platform into 40 Smith & Wesson with the M10 model, and they even experimented with a 45 ACP prototype that never made it past internal testing. At 7PRO, Brett put both 40 Smith & Wesson and 357 SIG through extensive trials, using high-speed footage to monitor gas system behavior, feed angles, and slide velocity in real time. The 40 Smith & Wesson showed strong potential, just a bit of tuning needed with recoil spring weights and gas port sizing. 357 SIG, though, really pushed the system's limits. It may ultimately require a longer slide and a revised spring setup to safely handle the higher pressure curve. As for 10mm, highly unlikely. The existing grip dimensions and mag well geometry just don't support it without a complete redesign. Instead, Brett's team is eyeing a return to the old K3 concept, this time with a modern twist using 380 automatic. Given today's advancements in defensive hollow points and the P7's inherent accuracy from its fixed barrel and tight tolerances, a properly executed 380 version might be exactly what many concealed carriers are looking for. Think smaller frame, lower recoil, and enough punch to get the job done. If you want to buy one, forget about flashy web pages or influencer discount codes. There's no online shopping cart and no countdown timers. To order a 7 Pro, you send a direct email to info7pro.com, outline your preferred configuration, and wait for your turn. That slower, hands-on approach has created a close-knit user base. Owners compare serial numbers, swap pictures of different thread protector styles, and debate whether diamond-like carbon coatings have more depth than traditional polish quench finishes. There's no venture capital backing this, no marketing blitz, and no push for mass production. Every slot fills months out. Why? Because it's not hype, it's a return to form. A passion project fueled by genuine enthusiasm and hardcore mechanical expertise. And maybe that's why this rebirth hits so hard. The original P7 was always an outlier. No striker-fired polymer, no double-action trigger pull, and absolutely no compromises. It was a thinking shooter's pistol grip pressure. Armed it, release, decocked it. The break felt like a tuned single action with a smooth take-up. The fixed barrel chambered modern hollow points without complaint. Even if the extractor failed, the fluted chamber still managed to launch brass cleanly. And that gas-delayed action? It kept your ejection pattern tidy and your slide velocity balanced. Now, that whole experience has been modernized, streamlined, durable, and priced right alongside other high-end carry pistols. But this isn't about retro appeal. This is proof that true mechanical innovation still belongs in the 21st century gun world. So, you're thinking about making the leap. What should you actually buy? If your goal is to capture that Cold War feel with modern reliability, then your best bet is to hunt down one of the remaining German frame 7 Pro M8 models. You'll get the unmistakable classic ergonomics and balance, but with brand new internals, modern coatings, and tighter machining than the originals ever had. Looking for something more forward-thinking? If optics compatibility and light mounting matter to you, hold off for the aluminum frame variant. It's got a built-in accessory rail, and the slide is machined for Novak pattern sights, perfect if you plan to add a red dot. That model is expected to drop near the end of the year. Collectors who value exclusivity and weight savings, you already know what's coming. Titanium. A limited run of ultra-light, ultra-rigid grade 5 titanium frames is on the way, and resale prices are already creeping up. If you want one, start budgeting now. There won't be many. Running suppressed. Make sure to spec your build with the revised chamber dimensions and the updated recoil spring. Pair that with 147 grain subsonic ammunition and a quality direct thread suppressor, and recoil becomes almost non-existent. The fixed barrel and gas-delayed system just eat it up. Concerned about long-term support? Don't be. Brett thought that through from day one. All the key parts, magazines, springs, pins, even those elusive trigger housings, are now being made stateside. Every file, every fixture, every tool path is archived and ready for future scaling. That means no dependence on overseas surplus, and no mystery wait times when a spring wears out. It also gives room for innovation. If a better piston alloy is developed or an advanced surface treatment becomes available, there's nothing stopping implementation. As for durability, it's looking solid across the board. Test pistols have passed 12,000 rounds without any real barrel erosion. The nitride finish is only starting to show faint wear where the slide contacts the rails. Gas piston fit remains tight. Spring pressures are still in spec. The squeeze cocker mechanism still breaks at 12 pounds to activate, with a smooth pound and a half of holding force. In short, it's performing exactly like the serious duty sidearm it was originally built to be. But what makes this story resonate isn't just the engineering, it's the movement behind it. We're living through a resurgence of enthusiast-driven design, just like boutique builders brought back the Colt Python and the Browning High Power before the big brands followed suit. 7 Pro proves what can happen when real shooters take charge of the legacy. This isn't some retro gimmick to milk nostalgia. It's what happens when mechanical brilliance meets modern manufacturing capability. A timeless concept, brought back with 21st century execution. And in doing so, it finally opens the squeeze cocker experience to a whole new generation of shooters, many of whom were told their only serious carry options were striker-fired polymers like the Glock 19 or the SIG P320. So now you know the full story, how one builder took a Cold War legend, rebuilt it from the inside out, and gave it a second life, one even Heckler and Koch never imagined. Would you ditch your daily Glock for a modern squeeze cocker? Would you go all in on the featherweight titanium, the optics-cut Novak slide, or the rail-ready aluminum frame? Tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear which setup speaks to you. Tap that like button, share this with your shooting buddies, subscribe for more deep dive firearm features, and hit that bell so you never miss a reborn classic.